For as long as the Q and the digital M have existed, Leica users have wondered what would happen if you took the best of both of those cameras and combined them into one system. Well, wonder no more, because Leica has done just that. This is the Leica M-EV1. I feel very, very fortunate that I am currently working on a project with Leica, one that has been shooting for the last month and that will be premiering next month, so you'll get to see that eventually. But because of this project, I've had access to this incredibly unique camera for, like I said, about the last month. Now, if you've seen any of my camera review videos in the past, you know that feel and experience are just way more important to me than specs. But I do feel it is important that I share with you some of the specs, because this is a completely new camera for Leica and somewhat unprecedented. I mean, this is the first time in over 70 years that Leica has put an EVF on a Leica M. Let's talk about that. A lot of people are saying that this is just a Q with an M mount. However, Leica is calling it an M. So what is it? Well, with the exception of two things, this is definitely a Leica M body. The first of which is obviously the EVF. The second is just the lack of an ISO dial. Everything else is Leica M. More specifically, the M11 range of cameras. It's got the same dimensions, it's got the same button layout, it has the same mount. My M11P is not brass, but it is a little bit heavier than this camera. This camera is the lightest of all of the M's. This camera also has the 64 gigs of internal memory out of the M11. The frame selector switch that you can find on the M11, M11P, M11D, M11 monochrome has now been replaced to a function button, a custom function button. But as of right now, you can only select 3 different things, or you can just turn it off. So I guess 4 different options in total. Leica, if you watch this, it would be great if that could just control anything, like the functions of all of the other function buttons. I would love to see it just have everything rather than just those 3 things. They say first impressions are everything. And the first time I got to use this camera, to be frank, I didn't really enjoy it. For 2 reasons. One, this camera is substantially lighter than my M11P. I actually don't think it's a huge difference in weight, but it feels like a huge difference in weight. And whether it is true or not, that difference in weight makes this feel less robust than my M11P. The second reason totally caught me off guard, and that is the EVF. I found myself missing more shots, futzing around in the menu more, and overall, I just found myself much slower when using this camera compared to my M11P. I really thought the EVF was supposed to make me faster. And so for the first few days of shooting this, I was kind of like, meh. They say first impressions are everything, but maybe they aren't always correct. I was not correct. You see, after a few days of shooting with this camera, I also decided to dig around into the camera's menus and see if I could change some settings to make the experience smoother and to make myself faster while using the camera. There were a handful of changes that I made that did make a difference, but I really want to focus on 2, because if you get this camera, change these immediately and they will make a huge difference, as they did for me. The first one is this tiny little function button up at the top. Normally on my M11P, I have this set to magnify. So if I'm using the back screen, I can set that button, it jumps in, magnifies, I can use focus peaking and hit critical focus. Instead, I map this to ISO because there's not an ISO switch on the top of this camera. Now that magnify function, I moved to the lens. As you turn the lens, it will automatically magnify. I'm not sure if you knew that. If you do magnify in, there's actually levels to it. So it's going to come set at the furthest back magnification, but if you use this little thumb wheel, the little dial on the thumb wheel, you can actually jump in further. On the Q2, it's simply the button in the middle of the D-pad. Those 2 little changes dramatically improved my experience with this camera. Now, I mentioned the EVF as being an issue because it slowed me down, but the EVF quality I also found to be kind of an issue.
I thought it would be a lot more fun to shoot out here than it would be in the studio. And what are we going to shoot? Well, I want to show you the quality of the EVF on the M-EV1. I want to show you as best as I can what you're going to experience when you look through the EVF. Not only that, I want to compare it to the optical viewfinder, the rangefinder style that you get on something like my M11P. And from what I can see, we are pretty locked on. And so let's start recording. And now we can take a photo. Great. Also, we can see the magnification happen here. So as I jump in, I can magnify and pull focus. And if I use the thumb wheel, it will. If I use the thumb wheel, I can either go out or I can zoom in. Pretty awesome. Okay, so this is now the M11P rangefinder patch, and you can kind of see it working in action. And as you can tell, it's not a very easy system to focus, but it is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. Focus peaking is on, but obviously that doesn't come through an optical viewfinder. And so when I take a photo, you can't even tell that I've taken a photo. And if I change apertures, you can't tell. So it always works no matter what. And I prefer this when it's super dark because I can see, whatever my eyes can see, I can still nail focus with an optical viewfinder. However, in EVF, they're kind of pointless when it gets too dark. Yeah. There we go. I will manually focus. You can see it jump in. And if I want to zoom, I can zoom like that. Focus peaking comes through, which is nice. That's how it works. But that is the Q2. Here's the deal. I forgot the M to L adapter, so I'm gonna swap it out. You're gonna lose the feed off of that, but at least you'll be able to see the EVF.
When I compare the EVF out of the M-EV1 to, let's say, my Leica SL2S, it's not even close. These are so different in terms of quality EVFs. But also, when I took a step back and thought about it, it was like, that's kind of asinine to expect this massive EVF. Like, look at the hump, look at the circle on the back of this thing. It would look hilarious on the back of this camera. There's no way they could make this EVF fit onto that camera. So when you think about it that way, you're like, well, what's the best EVF that Leica makes that could actually fit on this? Naturally, that's the Q3's EVF, and that's what this has. Both of these cameras, the M11P and the M-EV1, share the same processor. That is the Maestro 3 processor. Now, Leica does have a newer processor, drumroll, the Maestro 4. But that processor can only be found in the SL3 and the SL3S, and I'm assuming that's because those cameras have video, and it needs to handle those video duties. These cameras also share the same buffer memory, 3 gigs of buffer memory. And despite it having the same processor, these having the same processor and the same buffer memory, there are differences in things like boot up time and the amount of frames you can get when doing high-speed burst shooting. When it comes to boot up time, neither of these cameras are what I would call fast, but the M-EV1 is a little speedier, consistently 1 to 2 seconds faster. Let me demonstrate. So you can see the back of the screen here. Make sure I do it at the exact same time. If I can. That wasn't at the same time. We'll do it again. But the M-EV1 definitely turns on sooner. Off at the same time. We will try this one more time. See, it's a little bit faster. when it comes to high-speed burst shooting, something I almost never do, I kind of almost always run my M11P in single shot, but for that weird occasion where I'm shooting sports or something and I want to rattle off as many 61 megapixel photos as I possibly can, high-speed burst shooting is your friend. However, because of the 3 gigabytes of buffering RAM, you're not getting a ton of shots. On the M11P though, you are getting more than the M-EV1. I've found myself consistently getting 10 to 11 shots compared to the 6 or 7 that I get on the M-EV1. Now those numbers are really dependent on whether or not you're using the internal storage or the SD card to write the files to. If I'm using the internal storage as the primary storage location, then I get higher numbers. If I use the SD card, the ratios are still the same, you're just getting less. So like 7, 8, or 9 on the M11P if I'm writing to the SD card, and then 4 or 5 when I'm writing to the SD card on the M-EV1. What's super weird though is, let's say you've just rattled off as many photos as you can in that high-speed burst mode, and then you immediately hit play so you can review those images. Again, neither of these cameras are what I would call fast, but the M-EV1 is substantially faster to getting to that preview. For whatever reason, the M11P sometimes feels so long that it feels like it's frozen. So a huge win to the M-EV1 because it feels much faster. What kind of user would be interested in using the Leica M-EV1? I think if you are in that stage of photography where you've kind of progressed from your first camera, you're looking at your second camera, you're looking at upgrading and getting better images, and you've been looking at a Leica, but you don't want to slow down because of the rangefinder system. So if you're in that very fortunate situation where you've got $9,000 that you can throw at a camera, this could be the perfect camera for you. Also, there are so many older M users that have given up the rangefinder system, the digital M, because their eyes just aren't good enough to like dial in on that tiny little rangefinder patch. It's very difficult sometimes. So if you're that kind of user, you've got M glass, you want that small compact body, but you don't want to have to deal with the rangefinder, this could be the perfect camera for you. Finally, I think if you're the Leica M user that finds themselves using a VisiFlex a lot of the time because the lenses you've chosen to use, if you find yourself using lenses that often require a VisiFlex, well, hell, this could definitely be the perfect Leica for you. The purists will probably be angry at the Leica M-EV1. They will say something like it breaks a long-standing Leica tradition. But I would disagree somewhat. The cornerstones of what Leica cameras have represented over the last 100 years can still be found in this camera. Simplicity, minimalist design, and craftsmanship. It's true that the Leica M-EV1 is a departure from the framework that the Leica M line has been known for. But it is not a departure for Leica when it comes to trying something new. I also think of Leica's first digital camera. You know, when trying something new, it's usually safer to just dip your toe in. But that was not Leica's style. Instead, they did a metaphorical cannonball from the 10-meter board by introducing the wild S1, a 35 by 35 millimeter medium format camera with true 48-bit color, all at 26 megapixels. In 1996, and maybe even by today's standards, this was certainly a leap in technology and design. The S1 was never a success, but Leica never intended this camera to have mass adoption. More importantly though, Leica not only tried, but they really pushed the envelope. I'm sorry purists, but Leica is never going to stay the same company. This camera isn't for me, but that's not because it isn't a good camera. It's a great camera. I'm just currently looking for a different photography experience. But I'm stoked for Leica for trying something new yet again. And that being said, I'm stoked for all of the new users that are gonna come into the Leica family because of this camera. To all of you future Leica owners of the M-EV1, good luck on your photography journey. Cheers. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do me a huge favor and hit the like button, consider subscribing. Also, if you have any questions about the M-EV1, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm pretty good about answering each and every one of them. Thanks again for watching. I will catch you on the next one. Peace.